Alright everyone, so tonight we are going to talk about supporting our tomatoes. Now the old standby are these cone-shaped tomato cages that you can purchase at any store that sells vegetables or gardening supplies. And these guys work okay, especially for our smaller determinate type tomatoes that tend to stay a little on the smaller side. But if you're like me and you like to grow the Romas, the varieties that are indeterminate and tend to get pretty big, these tomato cages, even with support, typically aren't good enough. Now, if you want to stick with a tomato cage, you can easily make your own out of the concrete support wire. It's 4 inches, it has 4-inch squares, it's really sturdy. You can purchase it at a lot of your Tractor Supply type stores, or places like that. And make your own tomato cages. Those need to be you count 13 squares, and that is where you cut at the end of the 13th square. And those make really nice tomato cages. They will need some additional support, something like a post holding those cages so in our winds and storms they don't roll away or they don't break off and cause damage to your tomatoes. But those are really a great support system for your indeterminate type varieties. Tonight we are going to showcase the Florida basket weave method. This is used by most of your commercial growers because they don't have time to worry with tomato cages and they don't have the space to store those. So this is a great option if you like to grow really tall, indeterminate types, and if you don't have a ton of space to store the tomato cages. I'm going to try this on my 3 tomatoes tonight. You see at either end of my row I have some T-posts set in the ground. T-posts work really well for this particular type of staking because they're going to hold the string really well. But you can also use 1-inch square wooden posts. Those can work as well, they just may not be quite as long-lived. For my 3 tomatoes, I just need 2 posts, 1 at either end. If you have more than 3 tomatoes, every 2 to 3 tomatoes you'll need to put a post in. More potentially if you have really heavy varieties that are really vigorous growers. So what you need for this, you have my posts already set in the ground. I also need a synthetic type rope that does not stretch. Our tomatoes are going to get heavy as the growing season goes along, and we really don't want to have to try and tighten up that rope as they get heavier. So something that's not going to stretch is necessary. Baling twine, your synthetic baling twine actually works really well for this type of system. The jute type baling twine doesn't work as well simply because it tends to start to degrade in the sun as the summer goes on and it might fail in our system. So I'm using this, it's some nylon cord that I had at the house, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start about a foot up the ground. I'm going to tie my cord really tight because I don't want this to come loose. And I'm actually going to wrap this around a couple times so that I have a little bit of extra support to it. And I'm going to run this from one end to the other. When I get to the other end, again, I'm going to wrap it about a foot off the ground. Wrap it a couple times, and I'm going to pull this as tight as I can, because again, I really don't want this to move. And now on my way back, I'm going to pick my tomatoes up, and I'm going to sandwich them in between my 2 strings so that they are fully supported. Now the sooner we do this, the better, because if you've ever tried to support a tomato that's half grown, you know how almost impossible that can be. So now I've got my tomatoes, they're up, and I'm going to wrap this again. It's as tight as I can get it, and I'm going to cut my cord with enough length that I can easily wrap some more and tie this off. So for now, this is all I need to do. But when these tomatoes get a little bit taller, and they start to droop over again, I'm going to, another 6 to 8 inches up, I'm going to run another row of my twine, of my string, and sandwich these again in between. And we're going to keep doing that until we get to the top of these systems, to the top of these posts. And that should be enough to support my tomatoes through the growing season. Now these guys are Roma types, so they are going to get big. With this particular system, typically we do some pruning, so look for another video on pruning your tomatoes at a later date. But this has been just a quick demonstration of what the Florida basket weave trellising system looks like, and as the season goes on, we'll just keep adding more and more rows to keep these guys upright and off the ground. This trellising and these support systems are really important to keep our tomatoes. It helps to reduce your chances of disease by keeping the tomatoes and the leaves off the ground. And there is nothing more disappointing than going out to pick a tomato to find that it's been laying on the ground and it's half rotted or been eaten by an insect. So there are a variety of different types of support systems that you can try. I'm using 2 different ones here in my garden this year, but give the Florida basket weave a try and see if it might work for your garden and your situation this year. Happy gardening and happy growing, everyone.